Welcome to the Hard Faith Podcast. I'm your host, Spencer Folmar, the founder of Hard Faith. I've been working in the film and television industry for over 16 years. On Hard Faith, we're about asking difficult questions about life and faith in an R-rated world. Welcome to this edition of the Hard Faith Podcast. I'm your host, Spencer Folmar, and today I have with me my lovely bride, McKenna Folmar. McKenna, thanks for joining us. It's pretty cold out here.
It's real cold.
Today we are kicking off the third season of the Hard Faith Podcast. Looking forward to 2025 and recapping 2024. My last podcast episode of the season 2, last year's podcast, was about our ongoing saga at the hospital with our daughter.
This is a sad time over here.
Yeah. So the update is we're recording this on Tuesday, January 28th, and sadly, 3 weeks ago today, after a very complicated C-section that McKenna suffered through for 3 hours, 7 hours later, we lost our daughter, Mary Claire.
Yeah.
And we've been recovering slowly ever since. 2 Sundays ago, we had a funeral with the family and buried her on a family plot. And it's just been really a tough season.
Yeah. I think we talk about all the time that, like, in order to, like, function and just have a really good day, you just have to pretend like it didn't happen. And then you realize, oh wait, I can't make this, like, I can't pretend anymore it did happen. And it just feels like a really bad dream that we just can't wake up from.
Yeah. Yeah, some days are harder than others. This week, I think, at least for me, is the first week of, like, functioning and doing anything. Answering emails, answering calls, and recording this podcast.
Getting back into it, but the world kind of stopped. And the world kind of stopped for us for the 5 weeks we were in the hospital too, because every day was like a guess, like, are we going to go into labor? Is something terrible going to happen? Or are we just going to have a normal day in the hospital? So it's been a really hard 2 months. I'm grateful to be on this side of it, but also it's been really hard, especially after we lost Mary Claire. It's just losing a child is so hard.
Yeah, McKenna and I have dealt with together hardships and separately different hardships, some of which we shared on this podcast before. But this is like a whole new type of grieving that I've never experienced and never thought we'd experience.
Yeah.
It's just really hard.
Really hard. And hits you in waves. It's like an all-consuming grief that just knocks the breath out of you. I'm so grateful for all the kind people. We've gotten so many messages and texts and comments and reaching out. But it also, every time, so many people said the same thing happened to me or this happened to me. And it's like this sad club for parents who've lost their children. And I wish this club did not exist because there's so many people where this happened to, and it's just so sad and so wrong.
Ironically, even with the release of St. Nick, Alan Smith, who the film is based off of, talked about that sad club of losing your child. Alan lost his son, Garrett. And, he was praying for us while we were in the hospital, for that month and a week. And he said, I really don't want you to join our club. And here we are. Since McKenna's water broke, they told us that the chances of Mary Claire's survival, her water breaking so early at 19 weeks, were not high. But I just really, really held out hope up until Mary Claire's final breath that God would perform a miracle and that everything would be okay.
In that situation, my water broke at 19 weeks and 5 days. And so it wasn't a whole lot anyone could do at that point besides just try and keep me pregnant, even though my water was broken. And so I didn't go into labor. We had the choice of staying in the hospital or going home. But if we went home, I was at huge risk. And so was Mary Claire. And so we really couldn't go home unless we terminated, which, we just would not do. And so, we were there so long trying to save her. And then every day that went by, the more hope I had that she might come out and it might all be okay. And so the day she died, it was the worst day of my life. Seeing your child's heart just stop beating on monitor like that, it's just something I'll never forget.
McKenna's been vlogging about her experience in the hospital and about losing our child and the funeral and now trying to heal and move on in our life. Whenever we got to 24 weeks, she got to 24 weeks and 2 days, we had a lot of hope that she would survive. Obviously, with the amniotic fluid and infection and everything else, wasn't the outcome we were expecting. But it's also just wild to me that at 23 weeks and 6 days, at least in the state of Pennsylvania, people can still abort and terminate their child. Because when we held Mary Claire in our arms when she took her last breath, I was shocked at how much she looked like our firstborn daughter, Margaret. I mean, she was just a slightly smaller version of Margaret. She had hair, she was beautiful, and she was perfect. And we did everything in our power to save her. And it's just unimaginable people would elect not to do everything they can to save their children, but also just the loss of so much opportunity, because we got this grieving book from, some nonprofit foundation, and they talked about how, whenever you have a miscarriage or whenever your baby is stillborn or whenever you only have your prenatal baby for a short time, it's not that you just missed out on the opportunity of having a child, but you also missed out on all the future opportunities that person and the impact that person would have on the world. Because right now we have Margaret. She's talking, she's walking, she's 1.5, she's full of energy, she's full of life, and God willing, we'll see her grow up through all stages of development and living. But we'll always wonder what Mary Claire's life would have been like, and all those opportunities and memories that we don't get to have with her or create.
It was so hard. It was so horrible. They should not make caskets so small. It was so hard. And then now you realize, this didn't just happen now. It's like every moment, like, Margaret, saying words, and it's like, Mary Claire would have said words too. And so it's like, you just feel so robbed of not just the currently, but the future life they would have had too. And her spouse and her kids that she would have had and her grandkids. And so it's really hard.
It's really hard. A lot of people have asked us, how have you gotten through this? How are you getting through this? Someone commented or messaged me on Facebook, you've talked about hard faith for 10 years. Now you're living a hard faith journey in a new way. What have you learned? What's been your experience with God? And it's just honestly been really hard. I mean, in the time up until her death, I felt like we were really close with God and praying and hoping for the best outcome. And, it's hard not to be frustrated that the outcome was the opposite of what we prayed for.
Yeah. And it's like, why wouldn't God save our baby? That's something I just don't understand.
It's just really hard. I've been trying to write, and I did a ChatGPT search of the saddest verses in the Bible. And, thankfully, whether it be in Lamentations or the Psalms or Ecclesiastes, the Bible is very honest about the suffering of man and how difficult, life can be. But this is just a new form of grieving and a new test of faith that I wasn't anticipating at this chapter in our life.
I did not like this forever. I never thought I'd be in this situation. Just because Margaret was born so healthy. It's shocking.
Yeah. It's hard to make sense of it all. We have hope and faith that Mary Claire is in a better place. And like the NICU doctor told us, all that Mary Claire ever experienced in this life was love.
Sure.
And another counselor shared with us that, when Mary Claire opened her eyes for the first time,
she was saying Jesus, which was like the first, just such a nice thought. So people say these nice things and, they're true, but it helps, but also it's just really sad.
I don't think there's any experience in my life that I've been prayed for more, or that we've been prayed for more. We had such an outpouring of love on our journey in the hospital.
It was so kind.
So many messages and comments. It's the very best of social media. So many flowers, so many condolences.
And living in the hospital for 5 weeks with just every day not knowing, having that outpour of love and prayers, I could feel them. There was one night I woke up and was just crying because I was just so afraid what was going to happen. And I got a message while that was happening from a woman that I knew. And she was like, I woke up in the middle of the night and I just put that I'm praying for you right now. And, it just felt like such a God thing because I was living a really hard moment and she lived states and states away. And so it's just wildly kind. And I don't think I've ever felt so cared for in my whole life. Just very, very sweet.
It's been really sweet and encouraging, the outpouring of love. And I think we're still trying to put the pieces together. Thankfully, we had a really nice burial, and now working on, just preparing or beautifying the space where Mary Claire is buried. Last night, our family put up a lit up Christmas tree so that Mary Claire has a nightlight at night.
Like a fir tree. We decorate the fir tree next.
Yeah. So it's really tough, but we're just putting one foot in front of the other and praying. And at our best times, we do have that peace that surpasses understanding, and we're able to move on and function and cope with life. And at the hardest times, I just feel like I'm clinging to hope that I'm struggling to have. The first tattoo I ever got, and it's on my left forearm, and it was from a sermon I heard, which really I think was the first time I heard a clear gospel presentation about 15 years ago or 20 years ago in Los Angeles. And I think it's from the Gospel of Mark, but it's about a dad pleading for the life of his daughter to Jesus, for Jesus to heal his daughter. And the verse says, I believe, help my unbelief. And obviously that verse struck me when we were losing our daughter. And it feels like, even though I've had this tattoo for over 10 years, it still feels more true now after this loss than ever before. I think that's a lot of the hard faith journey, is that we're praying expectantly, but obviously the reality and the hardships of living in a broken world is a really difficult reality to deal with. And so hard faith is having faith, but admitting that we need help with our unbelief.
Yeah.
This is a very somber update to the new year. We have a lot of travel plans currently, and we're in Pennsylvania at our Pennsylvania home. We'll be back in Los Angeles later this year. We have the Hard Faith Film Festival, and crazy enough, Bright Skies coming out next week in February 7th. But I just wanted to update all of you because I know that even our podcast listeners were asking about the updates and what has been happening and, whether we're still at the hospital. And so, I wanted to update everyone and begin the third season of the Hard Faith podcast by being very honest and real about our family's hard faith journey.
We're out of the hospital, though.
We're out of the hospital. We're back with Margaret.
We're healing, and we're ready to hit 2025 in a peaceful yet powerful way.
Yes. When we did our New Year's resolutions in the hospital, we said that we hoped and prayed that this year would be our year of peace and prosperity. And so we're still hoping for that. We're still believing in that. And we're encouraging you all to pray, and we appreciate your prayers for us. And we'll have more updates to come.
Hopefully happier.
Hopefully happier. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Hard Faith Podcast. Thank you for all the love and support and prayers. And a happy, belated New Year. I love you.
Love you. I'm going back inside. It's freezing.
It's so cold here. Thanks so much for listening to the Hard Faith Podcast. Please subscribe and share. Visit hardfaith.org to learn more.